Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Thursday evening Mystery Wine Blind Tasting. I am delighted to be with all of you this evening, and this very fruited and expressive red wine, dare I say red, maybe even purple wine. We'll get to that in a minute, of course. If you're joining, please chime in. Let me know that you're here to taste this spectacular little number. Oh gosh. Quite a special nose. We're in the throes, of course, of a little bit of this winter weather wet mix outside, and so being inside with a nice warm, very inviting red seems just right. Curtis and Renee, Bill and Debbie joining. Great to have you guys here. Awesome to see you, or to be seen in this context. I got a chance to spend some time with them at the Governor's Cup judging competition. Curtis and Renee and Debbie volunteered as folks helping to facilitate the tasting, and then we got a chance to spend a little bit of time tasting some other wines at a great event, kind of pretty much in the middle of the actual tasting experience. And so wonderful to spend some time with you guys, and great to see you there. Dean and Bobbin, good evening. Johnny, the Sanders are here. Hi guys, welcome everybody. We should have some more joining by virtue of the fact that this particular month's wine sold out pretty quickly. And so I think everything that we had in house is gone, as far as I know. I had to squirrel one of these away just to make sure we had it to taste tonight, which is great. I know a few other folks have been in recently too and have picked up a few bottles for future tastings too. So looking forward to that. I hand delivered some to Frank Morgan, who is the director of the Virginia Governor's Cup competition. So hopefully he'll chime in and join us at some point here throughout as well. Man, it's just drawn me in. It's one of those wines that are quite expressive, right? When we talk about the intensity of expression, sometimes there are wines that we have to work at a little bit to find some aroma. Other wines are pretty muted. This one has quite an expression right off the nose, right off the opening, I should say. So as you're all here now, let's start. What do you see? I alluded to color already, but let's go back, of course, and focus on when you swirl the wine, the texture of it, what happens here in the formation of the legs and the tiers that form prior to the legs holding their shape. So as you swirl and the wine gets to the edge and comes down, it'll come down fast, slow, syrup-like you're pouring syrup out on your pancakes on a Sunday morning. Or is it coming down in sheets of water like the rain running off the windows right now? Jed and Barbara, good evening. Great to have you here. Kristen, Steve, awesome to have you here as well. We're just beginning to evaluate this number. It has a pretty good viscosity on my end. So as you swirl it, guys, and you look for this formation, the tiers that kind of run down the side of the glass, then they stay. If they stay formed, they form legs. And what do those legs look like? Are we talking about something that is fairly substantial and well established? Do they move slowly? That's an indication of this wine being perhaps a little higher in alcohol or having some residual sugar. It's a result of some level of sugar ripeness in the grape that's then vinified and fermented into alcohol, or left not fermented and therefore remains syrupy sweet. So think about that syrup. Syrup coats in these little lines like you would more than, say, water sheets. And so the level of alcohol or potential alcohol in the case of syrup, if we were to ferment syrup, it would be a pretty high alcohol beverage. These come down in a mixture. For me, it's a whole bunch of tiers. First, there was like almost a sheet, and then the sheet breaks up into a bunch of tiers, and that tier forms pretty quickly, but holds shape. So there's a potential for some moderate alcohol, moderate plus here, right? What about the, hey, Crystal, good evening. Great to have you here. What do you see by way of color? I don't have a white piece of paper in front of me necessarily, but this looks purple to me. There is a definite purple cast to this. So if that's the case, right, we're talking about a wine with some viscosity. Where's the opacity at? Can you read a paper through this, or is it fairly dark? I can't quite see lettering through it. It's, I mean, maybe a little, so it's medium plus kind of intensity. It's deep and dark, and it's purple. So it has a pretty good viscosity, some higher alcohol. We can rule out certain grapes in this process, right? We're looking at options right off the bat that we don't want to have on the table. And that's part of this deductive process. So for those of you that are maybe just getting started with this process or don't feel very confident in tasting a wine blind and thinking like, I just don't know enough about wine to know what to do, you know a bunch that you don't even know you know. So for example, let's get really simple and granular. It's not white. It's a red wine. It's not sparkling, and it's probably not sweet. We can't determine that just yet, but likely not. The bottle format wouldn't suggest that it is, but the wine in the glass might. And so we could wait for a moment there. But already you've ruled out a bunch of wines. It's not rosé, it's not white, it's not sparkling. So that takes a number of wines off the board. It's not a light pale red wine. We were talking today, I was talking with the sommelier team here about Bardolino. Bardolino is a wine from Italy that's made with Corvina. Super light and delicate. I was blind tasted earlier on Schiavia, which is also a nice varietal from northern Italy that's pretty light in color and red. So it's not those grapes, for example. It's probably not Gamay. It likely isn't Pinot Noir with the purplish cast that's here. So we're starting to rule out a whole bunch of wines already without necessarily knowing anything about what the wine even smells like per se, and certainly doesn't taste like. We don't know what it tastes like. I don't yet either. So from that standpoint, I already have a clearer sense this is probably a moderate to moderately high alcohol, robust wine with some skin that is pretty developed that has imparted a purplish cast to the wine. That's a pretty good start. We're 5 minutes in and haven't smelled or tasted the wine explicitly. So let's do that. As you're starting to smell the wine, look for a few things. Fruit, earth, and wood. What kind of fruit? Is it stone fruit? Does it have a pit inside of it? Is it tree fruit? Does it have seeds like pear and apple? Is it a tropical fruit? Is it citrus? Is it passion fruit? Is it banana, pineapple? What do you get? And is it berries, perhaps? What's the quality and the state of the fruit? Is it underripe fruit? Is it ripe fruit? Is it fruit that's been macerated with sugar and made into a compote? Is it fruit that's been baked? There are all kind of qualities of fruit. Curtis, Renee, and team jumping in with black licorice, menthol, indeterminate spice on the nose. Nice. Okay, so some spice. So fruit, earth, wood. Earth being those earthen flavors, earthen aromas, things that might be sweaty saddle, might be leather, might be tobacco, things that are a little bit more earthen oriented. Could be the smell of minerals or wet rocks, things of that sort. And wood coming up in the way of spice. So that indeterminate spice that Curtis is noting there is an indication perhaps that we're talking about a wine that's seen some oak. Yeah, it's, I would say redolent black, right? There's the black licorice for sure. I get that absolutely. And black fruit, and it's jammy fruit, and it's almost, or like confectionery sugar, kind of confectionery fruit that's candied fruit. Fruit flavor in candy, less than even candied fruit. Like blackberry gummies or something. It's the alcohol is prominent. There's a little bit of a burn in the back of the nose just from the olfactory element of inhaling the scent. Leather and cedar, indication cedar for sure of wood. So spice and cedar. There's a wine that has some wood components to it. So, this is not something we would call looking at this color, but it's not a stainless steel Chardonnay, for example. This has got substance. And so knowing that already is a reference. Super savory herbal that's like tucked underneath, or like this compote of stewed kind of burbling berries that have like rosemary in it, and the woodiness that comes from the rosemary stem. Dean's throwing out rosemary now too. Thank you for making my note look all the better. Yeah, it's very expressive. Where do you get intense flavor, aroma like this, purple colored intensity of kind of color concentration? Where does that come from in the world? What potential varietals might offer these aromas and this visual appearance? Oh, wow. I had an overwhelming sense of like a Parmesan tuile, a dried bit of Parmesan. And I was struck by that because I don't recall ever really having tasted that in a wine. So I'm going to have another taste here in a minute, because our staff meal was a Caesar salad with dried Parmesan crisps on it. And so maybe this wine just reawakened our staff meal, and kind of the quality of that staff meal lingered in my mouth somehow, and it just awakened that. So I have to taste this again to make sure that Parmesan crisp isn't an actual tasting note for this wine. It's more of a compliment thanks to the staff meal. No, there's still some kind of like cheesy rind to this a little bit. Taste reflects the scent coming from Dean and Bobbin. More savory than fruit, but the fruit is there. The tannins, Kristen, yes. Possibly Zinfandel and Malbec, going back to the question about what varietals it could be. Yeah, deeper, darker, richer. Malbec's a good call there. Zinfandel can kind of have a red cast, but probably can get into this darker color too. The purple element is interesting. Medium acid, tannins for sure present. And the tannins sort of, are the tannins masking some of that fruit? That's what I think. Maybe that drying sensation, the astringency that's coming from the tannins sort of mitigates that opulent fruit profile that's in the nose and allows the more savory notes, this cheesy note, herbal note, to come through a touch more, along with some acid that makes this wine quite zippy and vibrant, even though it's drying with the tannin experience. Kristen still has a tannin expression, as perhaps many of you still do, even though she decanted her wine about 45 minutes ago. They're there. They're pleasant. They're present and pleasant. They're omnipresent too. They're sort of everywhere in the mouth, aren't they? And kind of this gunpowder way, like they would just puff throughout the mouth, or they're layered everywhere. And they cause you to salivate a little bit more too, which makes the wine, I think, kind of read a touch more savory. It makes you salivate and want this with some food. Yeah. So there's tannin here, which is undeniable, but it's not like such an aggressive tannin as Curtis is now noting too. It's not a super grippy tannin. It's there. It's part of the experience. We have, let's say, moderate tannin, maybe medium plus body. The alcohol that we hit on the nose, or we sense in the nose, is it there on the palate? Wow. No, it's not crazy. Like the body weight is medium, maybe medium plus, right? The profile. Yeah, Syrah's an option. Steve, to your question about Syrah or Beaujolais Nouveau. Beaujolais Nouveau, I don't think so. Beaujolais would be a lot lighter in color. It would be a little bit more tutti fruity. The fruit itself would be more strawberry-ish, not as black kind of berry. The Syrah idea absolutely is a possibility, something we can consider for sure. The Syrah or Shiraz potential is there. What other varietals should we consider? Something, and how the varietals might help in this case, right? Take you to a particular place. Carignan, yeah, Carignan. That Carignan has for sure a tannic element about it. It has, by my recollection, at least in most occasions, a little bit more of a red fruit than a black fruit, but I've had some that can get that way. Like we can talk about Spain and Priorat in particular with Carignan or Carignana, to be a bit more in the black profile. It could have Grenache to go with that Syrah, Grenache and Syrah perhaps. Curtis is picking up a little bit of the alcohol. Dean's saying it's not as forward on the nose as it is on the nose. I agree with that. You get a little bit of a burn, but it's not a heavy burn in the back end. It's a little bit more balanced. So what does that mean? Like how would we pitch that, right? Let's say it's between 13 and 14% alcohol, or it could be higher and wearing it well, but it's not 14.5 and above. So maybe it's in the general range of an average red wine today is 13 and a half. Excuse me. Almost always 2, if not 3. I got away with just 2 this time. 13.5 to maybe 14.5 is sort of that average range now for reds. And I don't think it's above that necessarily. So it's not really, really powerful that way. Cheers. Thank you, Curtis. And Dean. Gosh. Yeah. All right. So Syrah, Grenache, Carignan, Zinfandel, Malbec. I like the Malbec idea. Is there an indication at all that we're in one place based on those varietals? If you're saying Malbec, for example, you have to say Argentina. You could easily say also, of course, France. And then other places in the world are growing Malbec, but not necessarily famously. You have some Malbec grown in the Loire Valley in France as Côte. You have it certainly more well-known in the southwestern part of France in Cahors. So could be interesting from that standpoint. Like maybe we're tasting something from Cahors, the southwestern part of France, and this herbal element being part of it. The herbal profile, I would say, is more indicative of what we might find, say, in France than we would find in Argentina. I don't typically get that herbal profile if Malbec is the grape, right? So this is the process. All right, this grape grows in these places. Let's think about these places and then cross-reference what we know about those places with this particular wine to see if it matches up, if there are some synergies there, if an aha moment comes to you, and then matches the climate kind of conditions of that place with the profile of this wine, right? So if we said, gosh, this is deep, dark brooding, warm climate, and then we named an alpine kind of grape from Switzerland, not so much, right? It's cooler. Like if you named Poulsard for the grape varietal, it doesn't match up. And so this needs to match up with our findings, but you can go with sort of a grape idea based on some of the fruit profile and some of the textural qualities or any note particularly that takes you to a grape, and then try that grape on. So let's do that again with Syrah, right? So Syrah or Shiraz. So Syrah, of course, the northern part of Rhone. It can be grown in the Priorat too, like we just mentioned with respect to Carignan. It can be grown in other places in the world. It's certainly grown in the California areas, Central California and North. It's grown in other parts in South America too, but they would be a little bit of an anomaly. It's absolutely grown in South Africa, and for sure under the name Shiraz, grown in Australia. And so as you think about Syrah from that context, it's got a really ripe fruit profile that it would have to be fairly ripe to be like the Northern Rhone expression of Syrah. So is Crozes Hermitage in the running? I mean, not really as much. I'm not picking up any particular peppery notes. The real fruit blackberry notes would take me happily kind of to Australia and its expression down that way. And you could get a deeper, inkier, richer profile. There's a tea quality coming on right now for me too. It doesn't remind, Dean's noting, it doesn't remind him of any Spanish or French wines as he had. Yeah, so there's also that kind of quality. You can take it from a different tact, and that is, does this reflect a wine of a particular place or region? Does it reflect a New World sensibility with a little bit less acid and more fruit, or is it a more Old World perspective, which has higher acid and generally speaking, a little bit more kind of nuanced elements beyond just fruit? These are all things that are broad generalizations to try to get you to a place. They're not correct in every case. You can absolutely find Syrah in a place we didn't mention. You can find Syrah with earthen notes and fruity notes in France and earthen notes in the New World. So, but these are just ways in which to try to use a deductive process to get you closer to an understanding of the wine. Dean, a dark version of Carmenere. And Carmenere for me, I'm always looking for some kind of pyrazine note, the bell pepper, jalapeno pepper, a pepper popper, stewed peppers, something along those lines. And I'm not picking that up here. It was like a faint hint, we noted it early on, of like a eucalyptus or a mintiness. That would take me back to Australia in particular, but not necessarily Carmenere. Dark version though, a very ripe version where it's not displaying that kind of pyrazine note. Yes, it would be an anomaly kind of. And so GSM, Kristen, absolutely. Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, maybe southern part of France, maybe Spain there too. Maybe it's a GSM from Australia, for example. I've had a number of those in the past, and those are fascinating wines. There's this fine layer of tannin still present. It's ripe tannin. It's verging a little on astringency, but it's not. No, it's nicely ripe. The fruit is ripe. The wine's ripe. 22 minutes in, it's time to pour more because things change at this point, the witching hour. That's dark. That's purple. What about something like Mourvedre? It's gotten a little earthier. Are you picking up, has it changed for you guys? I mean, some of you have had this open for a while. It smells a little bit, dare I say, poopy? Baby diaper. It's coming into its own more. It's like it's settled a bit. It came out a little bit brash when I first opened it and poured it, which was right at 7. It's like, it's inflating a little bit. It's not inflated. It's just like the wine had this density to it and just sort of just came into its own as it's been sitting here for a minute. Tannins have, both of you, a couple of you noticed that the tannins have been kind of disappeared a touch, that they've receded to the back. I'm still getting them like a nicely kind of thin layer of them that underpins the experience of the wine. A little bit like an oversteeped tea bag is a good descriptor too for the tannins. And I'm picking up a little tea in the aroma too. The fruit that was really prominent is there and sort of like, it hasn't receded. It's just sort of been like slightly eclipsed by some of that licorice, slightly eclipsed by some of the other notes that are coming forward. There's still a cheesiness to me. It's baked cheese, dried cheese, aged cheese, baked cheese. Interesting. I'm kind of at a loss. I'll put it this way. I'm not abundantly clear on where we are with this particular wine. It has options. The GSM Grenache Syrah Mourvedre angle, maybe more about Mourvedre. So maybe something like Bandol would be kind of fun here, coming from the southern part of France, getting the Languedoc, the Provençal kind of orientation of grape varieties that are pretty ripe. There's that garrigue spice that exists, which is a whole host of woody herbs. I like that idea. I like the southwestern France Cahors kind of Malbec idea here. Yeah, and Dean, I mean, the cheesy diaper aroma and taste is not one that I know of as a definitive example, like, you know, the petroleum note that you pick up in Riesling, the rose note that you pick up in Gewürztraminer or something like that. It's not an identifier that I have had too many times. Older Bordeaux, I can get kind of that baby diaper sometimes. This doesn't appear to be older. We didn't touch on that, right? I mean, it's got a slight watery rim, which indicates a touch of higher alcohol. Mourvedre dominant, kind of Côte du Rhône. Yeah, I think that, I mean, there's an interesting call there. Cahors and Malbec, still an idea I think that I like. I guess I'm sort of centered in France by virtue of this extra layering of flavor, but not, but somewhere warm and with a concentration to it. Like the tannin on the Cahors or Malbec from southwestern France can be pretty persistent, can be pretty gruff. And that might be the case that this is not as pervasive, or maybe it's a version of that where it's softened a touch. Yeah, I like the Cahors Malbec. I like a GSM or Mourvedre kind of dominant Bandol kind of wine too. I don't think it's super old, right? I think we're talking a pretty youthful wine. Wine, it's got a little sheen to it. The color is kind of consistent all the way through. Slight variation at the rim, but that's more a watery meniscus for that alcohol. I think there's a quality about this, yeah, that I'm in southern France. Shiraz was in the running, but the tannins don't like sort of match up. It's not as juicy. And it would be a pretty savory expression of Shiraz from Australia. Could be an interesting GSM Old Vine Mourvedre kind of focus from Australia too. That'd be really, really cool. All right, I think I'm planting a flag. How about you? Are you ready to plant a flag in your spot? Mine's going to be Cahors. It's going to be southwestern France. It's going to have 2 to 4 years of age. So let's just say 2022, 2023, 2022 maybe. Cahors or Malbec. Dean's going American Syrah. Awesome. Chateau de Pop, Steve? Yeah. I mean, absolutely could consider Chateau de Pop. GSM, I mean, Grenache Syrah Mourvedre or some variation there. It's not as Grenache dominant, so Chateau de Pop kind of holds me back a little bit. The purple quality and some of that tannin expression, the tannin could certainly be Chateauneuf, and that berry expression could be, the higher alcohol could be. So it's not a bad call. The other way to play this in the Chateauneuf de Pop game for sure too is that the bottle shape doesn't suggest it, and the price certainly probably doesn't suggest it. So, but a different crew from the Rhone. So a Vauqueyras, I think, would be a little bit lighter, but a Gigondas, something like that. Also, the bottle shape doesn't indicate that. 2023 Côte du Rhône, Curtis is jumping there too. So we got American Syrah, Cote de Rhone, Chateauneuf maybe, Core. So we're kind of playing France and American Syrah. So Rhone varietals. I guess we could say that we're kind of on a Rhone varietal area, and thinking about Rhone varietals, perhaps from France or southern part of France or more south in the Rhone. I should probably reveal this quickly before I check out again, like last time. For those of you that were part of that, apologies once again. I could see the comments still. I just kept rolling like it was fine, and then read your comments after a moment, and we were evidently offline. So apologies on that for sure. Back to this, 2023 Core Malbec. That's my guess. 2023 Cote de Rhone for a few of you. American Syrah. Oh, okay. Well, shoot. Walked by that. Like, not even walked by. Didn't even touch that. Douro, Portuguese red. Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? Why does that make sense? It makes sense. The color, purple, right? Ports are kind of purplish. We're talking about probably Touriga Nacional, yes, Tinta Roriz, and Touriga Franca. So this, yeah, duh. Some tannin expression, some ripeness, some higher alcohol. Why didn't we think about Portugal? Why didn't I think about Portugal? Duh. Good call. Fun wine. 2022. So 4 years. This Mary Taylor, she does great work, fascinating work. So she travels the world, principally Europe, and works with different growers and producers and sources wine from them. So Felipe Ferreira is on the label. So that's who made the wine and who lives in the place where the wine is made. And Mary Taylor makes a selection of great producers and sources. I think principally buys a large share of their production, if not all of it, and then co-labels it, puts her name on it. It's her selection. And she brings these wines in, like a knack at finding wines that are really representative of place and of a really small orientation farmer kind of approach, and a price point that is always favorable and has wines from everywhere. I mean, it seems to be expanding. So we've been tasting her wines for a little while, and we have a few wines that we enjoy from her, a couple that'll make their way into the spring wine buying event, which it actually is going to be at the end of March, I think March 28th. So put that on your calendars as another opportunity to taste some wines with us here at Field & Main. Prior to that, put on your calendars and snag a spot if you can for our Utopia Estates tasting with Josh Grainer and Jeff Turk from what was formerly RDV Vineyards, now Lost Mountain. And so Lost Mountain will be featured at the tasting at our event on March 12th. We're working on the menu this evening, and one of the courses, little teaser, a puff pastry vol au vent filled with a stew of sorts of braised duck leg and blackberries and some root vegetables with a little bit of seared foie gras on top. 2023 Rendezvous, not yet released, will be released in advance for this event. If that was not enough of a reason to come out and join us for that event, I'm going to pop open a couple bottles of the 2009 Lost Mountain, which I have at home. And so I've been saving those for an occasion like this one. And having Josh in house was all the more meaningful to be able to open that wine and revisit it now a number of years on. So please mark your calendars for that and make reservations if that is of interest to you. If not, I'll see you at another point, hopefully, certainly this one, as we do the next mystery wine blind tasting on the third Thursday of March. This is a cool wine. This is a cool wine. Man, we didn't even think about, gosh. All right, that's a good lesson, right? Like purple, deep, dark, brooding, powerful. And we're talking about Mourvedre. We're talking about wines that have Malbec in it, wines that have this intensity. Add Portugal to the list. Man, always learn something. And for sure, always have a great time and have fun tasting with all of you. Thank you very much. Cheers. Until next time.